Okay. Call to order this community forum for the Village of Ashcroft for Monday, April 13th, 2026. Mayor and council wish to acknowledge the meeting today is held within the traditional territory of the Kaplan people. Are there any additions to or?
There are not, but there is an error on the agenda that says tonight's meeting at 7 o'clock is at the community hall, and it is obviously.
It is obviously not at the
Yes.
community hall. All right. It is.
Apologies for that.
You have to beat it. All right. All right, so we move straight into presentation of the 2026 budget. So I'm going to hand it over to CFO Bella at a PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm trying to get it on the big screen there. I don't want to detect it.
Oh. I didn't unplug any.
It's the grounding function.
It's a grounding.
It's grounded right now.
Derailed it.
It was working fine this morning for our meeting, right, Brian?
Yeah. What do you guys do?
Oh, there you
There we
There
go.
you go.
There we go.
Detecting device. Shall I record that CFO Bella was experiencing technical difficulties?
Sure. Well, here's the final budget presentation. So the last opportunity for the community to give feedback. So primarily what I'm seeking is if there's feedback from the community about any of the initiatives we are pursuing this year. So getting into it. So we've got a situation where inflation was heading in the right direction. And there were some increases we were dealing with, Fortis being a major increase of 10.67 and Hydro 3.75. I find that nearly every year those two are able to get away with large increases. It's been the case last few years. But now we're dealing with supply chain disruption, and where we were waiting for our contractual settlement to come through, which has come through, and so we're looking at overall a picture where we've got a higher increase going through this year. Now, things haven't resolved, and I think people are underestimating the impact of what is going on in the Middle East. It will hit us, if not as bad as COVID, worse. So it depends on how long this continues, but things are not looking good. Asia and Europe are already seeing actual shortages, and give it a month and we'll start actually seeing physical shortages. But it's going to, gas is an input for nearly everything. Diesel goes into farming, transportation, everything, and the impact on food prices is also going to be felt because one of the three major inputs is urea for fertilizing, and that has slowed down. Urea is made from natural gas as an input. So, what does it do to our budget? It puts in a lot more uncertainty. We have a budget plan in advance. We'll have to see how the year turns out. So, we're being a little more conservative in our spending, and maybe delaying some things which we have set aside the latter part of the year. So see how things land. The advantage government has is that we are able to do some deficit spending. So in terms of, so it's a question of whether yes, the costs increase, but does the province and the federal government get into deficit spending to prop up the economy, which is quite likely. And Canada does have the room, unlike the States. We do have the fiscal flexibility to pursue this. BC perhaps not, because we went up in deficit in good times. So now the hard times are coming. I wonder how much in the province itself. Despite all of this, we've kept our tax increases as 3.5%, and utilities we've increased just 5% in the last 5 years. So this year the 5% increase went through, and we've kept things as modest as we can given the impact of escalating costs. So what I like to explain is how the taxes are calculated. I do that every year. We take our assessment, which we get from BC Assessment Authority. We don't have input into it. They give us a number. We multiply it by the tax rate, which equals the taxes payable. Now, we decide on the taxes payable side how much are we going to increase, which is 3.5%. So if the assessment goes up quite a bit, the tax rate comes down to have that 3.5%. So it always balances. We always make sure we're doing accounting for both. We are not a municipality which says, oh yeah, thank you BC Assessment, you get a windfall. So we always adjust it to actually be a 3.5% increase. This year the assessments overall have come down by 5%. Your rate will be therefore adjusted up to get the budgeted 3.5% increase. For example, if you were paying $100 in taxes, you'd be paying $103.50 if your property assessment declined by that average 5%. If you're some of those people whose assessment have shot up, I'm being one of those shot up 30%, I will be paying more taxes because it's over the average in terms of that. So I get questions about this every year. You'd be surprised. Every year this comes up. People are, after a number of years, people are still confused, and we welcome questions and try and explain it when I can. The village portion of taxes. We only get to keep 50% of your tax bill. So the long sheet you see, we only keep 50%. The rest of the 50% goes to PNRD, school district, police, BC Assessment Authority, and a tiny bit to Municipal Finance Authority, which is a common investing and borrowing group. So we can only control 50% of your tax bill. So if everybody's increasing taxes by 10%, and we are only increasing by 3.5%, your average will be between the two. So like 7% on average. So the village will only increase taxes what we are budgeting by that exact percentage, but we only determine just half of your taxes. So major projects, water meters is in full swing. That was a project we were given 100% grant for indoor meters. I need to stress, not for outdoor meters. We have some contingency where there are actual physical limitations to installing indoor meters, but we've been given a grant for inside cut-in meters, interior meters, and those people who choose to refuse to install indoor meters because they don't, for whatever reason, they have the authority to disallow access to their home, then they will get an outdoor meter and they would be charged the difference in cost. That is a very substantial cost because we have to winterize things and excavate and put insulation in that, and that cost is, the differential is 10,750 from the smallest indoor meter to the smallest outdoor meter. So just keep that in mind. Fire Smart is continuing. We had a earlier session of council. We just put forward a grant for the next years, hoping we get that. Sewage treatment plant upgrades are in progress. This is being financed by COVID money we had saved a while ago, plus our own savings, which we set aside every year. So that is proceeding. We're setting aside money for garbage truck replacement. So that's a big part of it because that's quite expensive. Our truck is prone to, the brand we have, it's about 12 years old, is prone to breakdown, and it costs quite a bit now to maintain it year to year. You look at it wrong, sideways, and it breaks down. So and then we have to go borrow a truck from Logan Lake, who's been really good to us. But we struggle with this, so we've been now trying to set aside money right away for this. And then there's economic development and grant writer from NDIT, which is an ongoing funding from NDIT, which is continuing. We have an intercommunity bylaw officer, which we shared between 3 communities. We have the LGCAP funding, which we allocated and used both for the doors and for EV. I must say the timing was appropriate just before the gas prices went crazy, but it's been reasonably well used, and now that we have it from grant funding, it doesn't really cost us much to use it. So I encourage as much usage as possible. And we've got a grant for North Ashcroft Reservoir. And I highlighted this because it's, given the conditions, it's subject to what we get and how much it's going to cost. The costs I hear are doubling for steel, aluminum, concrete. So what is the gap? And we'll have to look at it. Can we afford that gap? Say it's a $2.5 million project. If you're over by $1.5 million, can we afford that internally? Would be the question at that particular time. It's just how it's landed by the time we've applied, by the time things come through, what the state of. So this is something, even if we get it, we'll have to have a real thorough discussion of whether we can proceed on these cases. I do not want us to be in a situation where we're scrambling at the last minute. But then you don't want to let even 50% funding go. So I think it'll be a useful discussion to have in case we get it. The province is at a deficit of 13 billion. I don't know how much they're going to be giving out in terms of funding. So this was before all this stuff happened. Okay, so we organize projects in terms of critical, high, medium, and low. And the critical ones are the ones we actually pursue this current year, try to do it given our capacity. The ones which I've highlighted are the ones which we're keeping in towards the end of the year to see how things are turning out. So a total of about 180, those red highlighted. The other ones are in progress and are moving forward. So these are all kinds of different projects through the year. The big one, that's the big one you need to note, is we're going to see how the year progresses, what comes through. Hopefully things settle down, and we don't end up in a real difficulty. So if we do, then these are the items I'll be looking at first to kind of balance things. I don't want to, we've talked about internally, if things get really difficult, what are we going to do? So we are not caught unawares. But I don't think there's any point talking about that. That would just generate worry on the public's behalf. But this is what is coming through this year. And the total is $888,000 with estimated grants around 192. I think the Mesa Park upgrades, that grant for 100,000 has not come through, so we can reduce that. But we had internal funds set aside to get that. Anyway, the project is proceeding already, nearly half done. So grants are coming down rapidly, where some of these things were given, they're now province is saying no to a lot of things. The feds are, they fund the province sometimes a certain percentage, and all of that is getting tightened up quite a bit. But this is pretty significant list moving forward this year, and I think we can be proud of getting all of this done despite challenging times. We'll still get a lot of work done. There are a number of working groups which actually give feedback, which feeds into our project priorities. We are always open to hear about ranking projects and community feedback. Usually it's through your counselors. You tell them what you want. They give feedback in our budget discussions. We have multiple budget discussions. This is the last budget discussion before we get feedback to close off and finalize the budget. The ranking process is multiple meetings, strategic planning, which sets the overall goals. The process is quite disciplined. So to council, once the budget is done, halfway through the year, we don't encourage something coming up, let's do this. It needs to flow through, it needs to go into the hopper, get prioritized, and go that way. So if ideas come up this year, after this point, they're put into the hopper and talked about on the next budget planning session, given up. Because that lets us limit it to our constraints of how much money we have. So it's not ad hoc month to month. New priorities are showing up on election year or something. Great, so that promotes discipline and planning. So that's our prioritization: critical, high priority, medium priority, and low priority. Often things in high priority move into critical next year, or new things come up, or there's some operating limitations or capital limitations which we need to deal with, they come up. And the critical works are scheduled for this year. We are debt free. We have a well-managed treasury. We moved a chunk of our funds into basically money market treasury bills before this craze happened, and timing was good that way as well. When I looked at the various asset class returns, money market is doing the best risk-adjusted return as compared to others. The bonds are getting hammered, which I suspected they might as the 10-year yields go up. So we've done well. Our replacement of all our book value of our assets is, when we bought it, what's the cost less depreciation? That's about 19 million. The actual replacement value of our assets is about 70 million. Village has about 5.5 million in reserves, 80% of which is restricted, as in restricted for water or restricted for sewer, restricted for other things. Given the size of our assets, it's not a large reserve, so every year we try and work with our asset management and set a bit aside, pay ourselves first, set aside about 250 to 300,000 every year aside before we do any explicit savings for things like a garbage truck. So we try and manage it, but if you compare it to actual size, we are a very asset heavy organization as municipalities are. And we are setting it, we've got 5.5 to pay for 70 million if everything were to collapse tomorrow. But that's not what happens. As compared to other municipalities, our position is quite strong. And we're moving into this uncertain period with a strong financial base to deal with things. So. And thanks to council and planning that we are in this position. Okay, very short presentation. First question is any feedback lead from community? Any requests coming through?
No, so far no.
Anything from
The gallery?
gallery? Sorry, no worship.
That's it.
Yeah. I just have one question. Actually,
you
it's
wanna-
about,
Address, please.
Oh.
sorry, Warren Wall, address is 1314 Hustis Drive. Thank you for your, thanks for the garbage truck. How much are we putting aside yearly? And what is the estimated time to replace that?
So we've already put aside about, I'll have to grab a significant portion, like I think 350, 400 of it is already put aside. Our estimate is 650 and above for the actual. So I'm hoping by next year we're in a position to actually look at purchase or the year after if we haven't been able to, depending on how we end up. So what happens is at the end of the year, if we end up with what I call a run rate, like we can't do all the projects, what is left over gets put aside into reserves. So added that with what explicitly we are setting aside should cover next year to buy the garbage truck. Or if it's not enough and things have tightened up, provincial grants haven't come through or whatever, then by the year after. The challenge is with the garbage truck, I think we paid more than 40,000 just to run it and repair it. That's pretty substantial. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, it sure does.
And did you also wonder how long, you asked the time component, like I get, how long is it between, to actually take delivery of it? Is that
Yeah,
what you?
that is what, actually, yeah. You know, would you, when you order it or you buy it, would it be would you get it within a year? Is it from the time of purchase, that kind of thing? How much longer are we gonna have to deal with the old truck that we have? I guess was my getting down to the point.
The vendors are pretty keen to deliver, and we've got a certain set of vendors who are it doesn't take usually more than 3 months for everything to work, but Brian's the expert. We'll be comparing a few quotes and looking at a few things, so depends if we are mandated, if we go the RFP route, RFQ, getting quotation. Usually we try and keep things faster by looking at least 3 quotes and getting a decent price for it. And once it's ordered, it generally is not that long. Brian, you want to comment?
So depending on what we set our facts for to what we would like to purchase, then it depends on the market. Sometimes there are things readily available within 3 months, but you're right, sometimes it could take up to a year to receive something. So it all depends on the market and what's going on at that point.
Thank you for taking my question.
Does anyone on council have any questions for CFO Ballard? Councilor Tippett.
When you were speaking about the twinning of the North Ashcroft Reservoir, you mentioned that the provincial monies would provincially, we were in a deficit position, but is there not the opportunity for the federal government to look at and small and that way that wasn't mentioned in what you said?
So this one is the one I think we've applied to is the Strategic Priorities Fund, which is administered by UBCM. I believe a portion of that comes from the feds and some from the province. I think a majority comes from the Fed. So, and we are lobbying hard to get it. If we do get it though, the issue is the original number versus what it will actually cost on the investment.
I just wanted to clarify that a good portion of that was federal,
Federal,
not
yeah.
provincial in that.
In that, yeah, it is. Good question, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Tippett.
Secondly, the discussion about the $70 million in replacement cost on our $19 million worth of depreciated value now. From the business world, after the amount of time that this village has been running, that seems like it's an absolutely phenomenal ratio. If I could run a business for as long as we've run here with depreciated equipment, if I could run a 25% better than 25% by a bunch depreciation margin, I would be more than thrilled about that. And I think that even though the village has about 5.5 million, like you said, to replace 80% of that opportunity, I don't think that there's a lending institution and or somebody that wouldn't be able to go back to provincially and say, look, here's the track record. I mean, those values look phenomenal to me. I certainly don't want to scare the public with the idea that we're in any kind of a financial position that I think we're way ahead of a lot of other communities. I think that is what I'm going to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We are ahead of it, and I'll address this in the asset management process again. There's certain classes of things which are absolutely 100% we have to replace, like equipment and fleet. There are other things like buildings on the other extreme, which really we don't replace. We just fix them up and keep moving. So it shows a large amount as a replaceable asset. We really don't demolish a building and build a new one right on top of it. So you have to consider in terms of what are you setting aside of the value? And I have, if you recall, I've shown this a graph which shows an arrow between the two extremes where we are and how much are we covering. Are we in the green zone or yellow zone or the red zone? Red zone is we are setting too little aside. Green is more than enough. So when I go over the asset management process and we review it every year, that gives you an idea. So we're actually doing quite well compared to a lot of municipalities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you, CFO Bala, for your fiscal prudence and your wise stewardship of our finances. I see other mayors look at me with envy when I say that we're debt free in Ashcroft. It's not something that every municipality can say by any stretch. All right, thank you very much. I am going to move that we adjourn to a closed meeting to discuss an item under Community Charter Section 90.1C, labor relations or other employee relations. E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. Seconder, Councilor Clement, thank you. All those in favor?